Hey everybody, this is Ty Nathan Clark, and I just wanted to jump on here with a special short little episode, more of an update, just to let you know why there wasn't an episode this week. Nathan and I have been extremely busy prepping work, getting work ready, working with other artists. We've had family things come up. Nathan's daughter just left for college, so he's been busy with family stuff. I've been busy with some family stuff, all good things, but we decided we didn't want to rush an episode, so we're taking some time, took a little break in between before we start the next chapter of Just Make Art. And we have a lot of really fun, exciting things coming to you. And I cannot wait to absolutely dive into those in the forms of artist features, guest co-hosts, question and answer episodes. And I think this is going to end up being our favorite of Just Make Art coming in the future is book reports, where we dive into books that were absolutely foundational for us in our studio practice, in our lives as art makers. And the first book we're going to start with is the book Art and Fear by David Bayliss and Ted Orland. It is a must read. If you don't have it, go get it, order it today, read it. And if you have read it and you have questions and thoughts that have come from your reading in the past, send it to us and maybe we'll be able to incorporate them into the episode. You can either email or Instagram message us. At Instagram, it's at Just Make Art Podcast. Via email, it's justmakeartpodcast@gmail.com. So Art and Fear, we're going to break it up into 3 episodes, and part 1 is coming next week. This is also a book I teach in my artist mentorship program because it is, like I said, absolutely foundational for me. We're also going to probably go through How to Be an Artist by Jerry Saltz, Get the Picture by Bianca Bosker, Faith, Hope, and Carnage by Nick Cave, and Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke, one of my favorite poets, and an absolutely influential book as well. All of those are. So, like I said, if you've read any of those books, or if you get them now and read them, send us your questions or thoughts that have arrived, and we will try to incorporate those into the podcast. Little reminder, you can also watch us in video on Spotify or YouTube. So all of our episodes have been videoed. I have a really fun time editing them and putting B-roll of the artists we're talking about, moments or stories, photographs, video of them in the studio, or little Easter eggs of things where I like to make fun of myself and Nathan at times in the videos. So if you're looking for something to bide your time in between the next podcast episode, make sure to check us out on YouTube or on Spotify. One more thing. We would love your reviews. We know we have a lot of listeners. We would love to hear from you. So either on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, we would love it if you would just leave a short review and even give us a rating. It really does help push the word out and spread the podcast to new listeners. Well, I'm going to read something to you before I jump off here. And this is from my current readings as I am studying DeKooning, An American Master by Mark Stevens and Annalyn Swan, which won the Pulitzer for biography. It might be my second favorite artist biography ever written, second only to Mary Gabriel's 9th Street Women, which is by far and away my favorite art biography ever. So if you haven't read it, Nathan and I reference it all the time. I would highly suggest reading it, but you can also listen to it on audiobook as well. So this little section from DeKooning, An American Master, is right after a young Willem de Kooning met the artist Arshile Gorky in New York and became super close friends, and Gorky became a hero also to Willem de Kooning and looked up to him. And this is when de Kooning first went to the studio of Arshile Gorky in the 1930s. When de Kooning walked into the studio, he was overwhelmed and made dizzy by the atmosphere. He had this extraordinary, extrasensory perception, de Kooning later told Gorky's nephew, this gift. De Kooning's epiphany in the studio was almost religious in character, as if he had finally reached the end of the pilgrimage. Here he found the true metaphysics of art, where its principles were understood and its sacraments faithfully practiced. Certainly, Gorky, an Armenian who came from the land of religious passion and revered ritual, treated his studio as a sacred kind of space. To begin with, it was quite unusual at that time to have a place outside one's apartment, consecrated to nothing but the making of art. The artist Stuart David said, "He was the only artist I can recall who always had a real studio. Most, including myself, painted in their bedrooms or temporary makeshift quarters. In addition, he also managed to keep these studios stocked with a supply of art materials worthy of a small retail store, and he used them up with abandon and unconcern for cost in accord with his temperament. In brief, he galloped around the village like a mountain goat with his pauper peers, and he got off quite better than most. DeKooning said when he came into the studio, he was bright enough to take this hint immediately. The hint was that a serious artist did not kid around. A serious artist made art the center of their life, treated it as a calling, and sacrificed everything else to it. If they didn't, they were just an amateur. Gorky could deny art nothing. The tactile presence of the paint intoxicated him. He used paint more than anyone. He outdid everybody. He had that fire, a burning. In the early 30s, Gorky became a devoted disciple of Picasso. In his still lifes of the time, he copied Picasso's work in order to understand the master's art, not just from the outside, but from within. Gorky's approach to Picasso had a great impact upon DeKooning. The decision to paint Picassos, to make Picasso part of his studio, gave life to the abstract formulations about the painter, conveying a feeling of closeness, almost intimacy to modern art. As T.S. Eliot famously wrote, "Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal." Gorky hoped to one day steal. His intimate approach to tradition was a revelation to DeKooning. It helped him close, perhaps steal is the better word, a breach in his sensibility, leading him to reconcile his love for the past with his passion for the present. According to the critic Harold Rosenberg, Gorky's challenging remark about having your own ideas transformed DeKooning's entire attitude towards painting. If you have your own idea, that was it. You're stuck with it. The history of painting, however, contained endless inventions which the living painter could make their own. Even inventing a thing that had already been invented was an act of creation. DeKooning likes to call this inventing the harpsichord. The fact that the harpsichord, and even the piano that superseded it, does not prevent the invention that brought it into being from being legitimately repeated. Art belonged not to history, Gorky thought, but to the present. What DeKooning found liberating was that Gorky treated the past as if it were alive and speaking to modern artists, as if it were news that stays in the news, in Ezra Pound's famous formulation. They also are not afraid to criticize the greatest artists. Even the best had weak moments. Analyzing the masters in this fashion fired both artists' imagination and ambition as they struggled to find their own voices. The painters of the past became colleagues and contemporaries, which allowed them to think of joining their august circle without being awed into silence or timidity. Wow. That's one of the reasons why Nathan and I push so hard to study and research and dive into the past. My contemporaries who are in the studio with me regularly are artists of the past. I've learned their ways, I've learned their life, I've learned their techniques, I've learned how much they wanted this. And I bring them into the studio with me every time I'm making art. They are a part of my journey. They may be long and gone, but they're a part of my journey. So I hope that gives you a little inspiration this week in the studio. We will see you next week with Art and Fear, Part 1. So excited to dive into this book. It's a monster. It's a super easy read. It's not very long, but it is foundational. Hope you have a great week. Go make some art. Get in the studio. Even if it's one mark or one stroke, whatever you're going to do, get in there and make something, and we'll see you soon.